Judica County. My name's Josh Whitaker. I'm your host today. We're here today to talk about the Second Amendment, your rights under the Second Amendment, and particularly how those rights exist in the state of North Carolina. As a reminder, I am an attorney with the law firm of McCullers, Whitaker, and Hamer. I am licensed to practice only in the state of North Carolina. So if you're viewing this podcast or the YouTube video somewhere besides North Carolina, what we're talking about might not really apply to you. With me today, I've got two panel members. Here to my right is Mr. Damian McCullers. He is a partner with the law firm of McCullers, Whitaker, and Hamer. Welcome.
Hello.
And to his right, we've got Mr. Joe Hamer, who's also a partner with the law firm of McCullers, Whitaker, and Hamer. Hello, Joe.
Hello.
All right. So, this prop is fantastic. Hopefully you're getting a good shot of that. But it really kind of gets us in the mood to talk about something that's often in the news, is often debated, is a hot topic anywhere in the United States. And before we can talk about the Second Amendment, I think we need to take a quick minute to actually read the original text of the Second Amendment. And for that, we'll turn to Damian.
So I think a good starting point is to kind of get to the meat of what we're actually talking about. And there's a lot of debate about what it actually means and how it's interpreted. But even still, just the meat of the Second Amendment basically says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So that's kind of the meat of what we're talking about today and the constitutional basis for everything else that we're going to talk about as it relates to you as a citizen.
And I think it's important. That's it. That's the Second Amendment. So we have tons of Supreme Court cases on, of course, the national level, tons of cases on the state levels, and we're interpreting that. What was that? Maybe 30 words?
Maybe
30 words. And that is where all of our rights in relation to firearms come from. And that's what we as a nation argue and quarrel over, is interpreting what that means in today's society. And so, again, we'll be focusing on North Carolina specifically. And so the first thing I figured we'd start with, instead of talking about case law or kind of, turning this into a law school class on how the Supreme Court has ruled, is just really to talk about, as of today, the day we're recording this podcast, what are your rights? And so the first thing I was going to start out with is, well, one, can you legally own a gun in North Carolina?
So the simple answer to that question is yes. There are certain steps that you have to take. Those steps will vary depending on what type of gun or firearm you're attempting to purchase. If you're getting a long rifle shotgun versus a handgun, then your requirements will be different. There may also be some requirements via your local sheriff that you may need to get and take care of as it relates to, number one, getting the license to purchase and getting a license to carry concealed. And I want to kind of differentiate between those two.
Let me interrupt you, because I do want to get to the concealed carry, but I guess just as a starting point, the answer is yes.
The simple answer to the question is yes. You can legally own a firearm in the state of North Carolina. There are some states that have just said you can't own a firearm and carry, but in North Carolina, yes, you can own a firearm.
So for right now, for example, if I wanted to go down the road into a store, buy a shotgun, unless I'm on a federal list or something of that nature, right, I'm going to be able to buy a shotgun.
Right. You'll be required to present identification, just saying who you are. You'll be run through a database. Usually takes about 30 minutes to an hour or so for a long gun. They'll run you through that database. As long as there are no flags for you there, you'll be able to purchase.
Same thing for a rifle.
Same thing for a rifle generally.
And so where it kind of starts getting a little bit different is if you want a handgun.
Correct.
And so that's when you're going to certainly need to apply with the sheriff's department. You're going to need a permit. Sheriff has to sign off on that after background check, things like that.
Absolutely. All right. And let me just say, so the check that you're doing with the long guns is still a background check. It's just not as intensive as it would be for a handgun. And one caveat that I did want to put out, because we did say the short answer is yes, you can own a firearm in the state of North Carolina. One big one that I want to put out there for folks is unless you are a convicted felon. If you are a convicted felon, you cannot own a firearm, period. Legally.
Yeah. Of course, I guess anybody can own a
You
firearm.
can own
legally.
So technically you can own it, but legally. and that's the whole point of our show is what can you do legally?
All right, so now you've gone, you can buy a gun, you bought a gun, keep a gun in your house.
I do. Several.
So can you?
Can you? Yes. Especially with the long guns, it's yours. Again, that right that kind of flows from the meat of what we just read in the Constitution gives you that right to keep that firearm in your home.
Anywhere you want to in your house.
Anywhere you want to in your house.
Outbuilding.
And we get into to kind of, and I haven't used this word since law school, but the curtilage
That's a good law school word.
of your home. But yes, you can keep it. If it's your property, generally, you can keep it there.
And that can be out in the open or that can be concealed. So we talk about open carry, we talk about concealed carry. When you're on your property, those terms don't mean anything.
Absolutely. When you're on your own property, generally your home, and I believe the statutes and the case law actually even indicate your business as well. You can carry, whether it be open or concealed, but you have to be on your premises.
All right, well, that's all good to know. So now let's take it a step. So how about your car, your vehicle?
So your vehicle is a little bit different, and I would tell you, I guess this where we kind of differentiate between the long guns and the handguns. Most of the time, it's handguns that people are dealing with in their car just because it's easier to carry, easier to conceal, not big and bulky. And with that, that's where we get into the concealed versus open carry. So you're allowed to open carry if you have a pistol. What would need to happen is it's basically called a plain view doctrine. So if you're happen to be stopped by law enforcement or if law enforcement is anywhere in the vicinity, if you're just out and about and you have a firearm in your car, it needs to be in a situation, in a place where if a law enforcement officer approaches, they can see it within plain view without having to search for it. So you'll hear that a lot as it relates to your firearm, having it in plain view. If you are going to conceal your firearm, you need a carry concealed permit. That is a separate permit from a purchase permit.
And we'll talk about that.
So, but that's what you want to do. So if you do not have a concealed carry permit, then your firearm, if it is in your vehicle, will need to be in plain view for an officer.
And I think that's something we need to drive home is that's tricky.
It is tricky.
It's tricky. And so, what an officer is going to see, and depending on his vantage point, what's concealed, what's not concealed, that is another law. That's a slippery slope.
It is a slippery slope.
So, everybody's kind of got their own tolerance for risk, but that's something that I always is real risky. A lot of times if I'm going to have a firearm in the vehicle, I keep it in the trunk or the lock box or somewhere. Actually, I have my concealed carry permit, so it's not a big deal for me.
And the trunk more so the trunk than the lockbox. The lockbox, I would say, that's just concealed, period, point blank. The trunk, when you get to that portion of it, because in plain view and what is concealed, so you get into statutory language. And what you're looking at is, and looking for is, as it relates to an officer and what he would consider concealed, is it within what we call your lunge area? And is it within your grasp? So I would argue, and probably law enforcement would argue to you too, that if it's in your glove compartment, that's within your lunge area, that's within your grasp. Yeah. That's something that you can get to readily, and it is readily available to you. Your trunk, I think, is a different story because that would require turning off the car, exiting the vehicle, or either pushing the trunk button, getting out, getting to it. So, I think you'd probably be safer if you do not have a concealed carry permit, having it in the trunk. As opposed to your glove compartment. I think at that point, if it's in your glove compartment, I argue with you that that's concealed. And you need
Don't chance it.
Don't chance it. You need a concealed carry permit. That's it.
So let's go ahead and talk about the concealed carry permit. So in North Carolina, and I don't have handy when the statute came through on that, but you are permitted, if you follow the rules in the statute and you become a permit holder, to carry a concealed weapon. And there's certainly rules that go along with how you can do that. But just basically say in North Carolina, not only can you own a gun, if you go the step further and you take your class, you go do your range time, you get a permit, in certain situations, you are allowed to carry a concealed handgun. I don't know what else you'd really conceal, a concealed handgun, but there's still limitations to that. You can't.
Absolutely. There are certain places
Yeah.
you just can't carry. And you'll see banks, certain parks, just maybe family events where there will be actual signs that say no concealed carry.
Schools,
government buildings, those types of things. So while there are certain places you can carry concealed, I would be more concerned and more aware of where you cannot.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you can't carry concealed if you've been drinking.
Correct.
Right, so I think the statute recently just changed where you could even carry concealed in a bar, but you
believe
can't
that's
have
correct,
any
but
alcohol.
you cannot have any
So I don't know
alcohol.
why you would be there.
Well, if you're the owner.
He has some good water.
But so you can own most guns. Then of course we ain't talked about this, but there are firearms that you're just generally not allowed to own.
Correct. Or, well, I should say with this caveat too, you technically can own any firearm, but you may have to go through your local sheriff to get permission to own it. And most of the time, your local sheriff will not sign off for you to own it.
Right.
I think
So
they're class 3 firearms. I think fully automatic MP5s, fully automatic anything really. Your sheriff would have to give you permission, and normally that just does not happen.
So we have the right to own firearms, but it is subject to severe limitation.
Some would argue it's severe, some would argue it's reasonable. Who am I to say?
All right. We're not going to get into that.
We're not going to get in that debate today.
All right. So let's talk real quick. So we've talked about concealed carry, open carry. Is open carry legal in North Carolina?
Yes.
All right. I will throw in a caveat because I have seen this happen, especially if you're in a town or a city that has any local ordinance about, what is it, the terrorizing
Going armed to the terror of the public.
So even though you're allowed to open carry, if you open carry somewhere where it's causing problems, a local sheriff, they can ask you to stop under that ordinance. And I have never followed that situation if anything came of it or what. Of course, the amendment's federal law, what trumps it, how that works out. But I have seen people get a ticket.
Right. And again, that's kind of, you're going, like you talked about, from the federal level all the way down to your state and local level. And what I would tell you is, I think there's the in the moment and the real world situation, and then there's the law school question situation. I think in the real world, if you're out and you're doing open carry and a law enforcement officer shows up and says, hey, do you mind putting that away? You put it away.
All right.
Makes perfect sense.
Whether or not you have the Second Amendment right to do it, whether or not you can open carry, it's just kind of one of those deals. However, there are people that test that boundary. And, a lot of times that's done in court. And they may get the victory there to just say, no, you have the right to open carry as long as you're not doing it to the terror of the public. But again, that's another forum. That's another show. My suggestion as an attorney is just, yes, you have the right to open carry. If for some reason someone felt uncomfortable enough to the point that they called law enforcement, if they ask you to put it away, just put it away.
We're going to move in a different direction now. So we've talked about gun ownership, what's legal, what's not legal, where you can have a gun, concealed carry versus open carry. Now I want to talk to, there's been some recent cases nationwide and in North Carolina. It's called different things, Castle Doctrine, Stand Your Ground. But throughout the country, there's laws about when you have to retreat from a dangerous situation, how you can defend yourself. And we're not going to run the gamut on this, but just because there was a recent case, Damien, how does the law stand in North Carolina? And I know things can be different depending on the facts. So we're in our house. Someone has come into our house and to commit a felony, to do us some sort of harm. What can we do?
Under that factual situation, you have no duty to retreat. You are able to defend yourself and your loved ones with essentially whatever force you need to protect yourself.
And the law, if you've got someone in your house, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not a criminal law attorney by trade, but if someone is in your house and that you did not invite them in your house, it's safe to you can assume within reason.
Absolutely, you can assume
they're there to do you
they're
harm.
there to do you harm. And this is a kind of a case by case situation, but just as a broad spectrum of kind of a basis, if someone is in your home uninvited, I would say it would be safe to say you could assume that they are there for some nefarious purpose.
And I don't think, and you have to use common sense. I mean, the
That
law
doesn't mean shoot that person.
Right.
Away.
It certainly doesn't mean shoot the maintenance man if he's coming in to fix your HVAC unit.
Your assumptions have to be reasonable too. So
Absolutely.
if the guy's reading your meter in the backyard, and a reasonable person should know the guy's reading your meter, and you shoot him, you're going to have problems. The law's not going to protect you in that kind of situation. But generally speaking, because this is a quick overview, you have the right to defend yourself in your home.
Absolutely.
All right. Now you're walking down the street. You've got your concealed carry permit, so you are armed. You have not been drinking. You're carrying your concealed weapon, full compliance with the law. You're with a friend. Someone steps up, shoots your friend. They turn and point the gun at you. Do you have a duty to retreat?
I would argue that you don't have a duty to retreat, just based off the fact that now and it really is fact specific, but I think under your fact pattern, the gun has now been turned on you. I think there's an argument to be made, even when the gun is on your friend.
I think there is too.
Defense of others, I think you're okay. But specifically as it relates to how you framed it, the gun's been turned on you, you have the right to use force, the amount of force that was threatened upon you.
The reason I bring that up, because there was a case in 2018, North Carolina Supreme Court, or was it the Court of Appeals? But anyway, there was a case in North Carolina where that exact situation happened, and the court went so far as to say you do not have a duty to retreat. So even you never had a duty at all, I don't think, or you never had really a duty to retreat in your own home, obviously. And now in public, you don't necessarily have a duty to retreat. But all this is so fact specific. You really just, it's a reasonable person.
Right.
You just got to be reasonable, and the law is not going to protect you if in hindsight, you should have known better, or you should have been more reasonable.
Absolutely. Or if someone is, walking up threatening you with a paper clip and you shoot them, that's just not reasonable.
Right. So that is really a quick overview of the state of kind of what I would call Second Amendment law, Second Amendment litigation in North Carolina. And this is a hot topic, changes from year to year. Certainly if you're a concealed carry permit holder, you need to stay on top of the law and the changes. Well, that is very interesting that so much litigation, so much case law, so much interpretation can come from such a small amount of material, 30 words,
Yeah.
however many years ago.
Yeah, but framers know what they're doing, man.
I'm not a mathematician. So many years ago.
Long ago.
Well, we appreciate you joining us. Hopefully this was a useful overview, and we'll see you soon.